Hello and welcome to today's webinar, AI in Biopharma Marketing. My name is Jan Pilar. I'm Associate Director with the IBM Healthcare team. I'm working on a lot of different projects and I'm very happy to be the host of today's discussion. Let's quickly set the scene. What are we talking about today? As we all know, and you probably better than I do, biopharma and healthcare marketing has tremendously changed over the last couple of years. It is not about providing just information. It is really delivering value to different stakeholder groups. We have patients whom we want to empower to better manage their diseases and illnesses. We have the wide variety of HCPs where we need to deliver the right information at the right time and also in the right format. And we also have payers and reimbursement institutions and regulators where we need to convince that our innovations are really a step forward and are worth of reimbursement and inclusion in guidelines. So it's really a tall order what we need to deliver. And the good thing is AI can come to the rescue. And I'm sure you are all aware of the frenzy over the last 2 years, specifically around generative AI, where we can see that this can truly transform marketing in our workflows. We can better produce content at scale, we can better produce personalized content, and we can automate a lot of our content and marketing processes. On the other hand, there's a lot of anxiety and hesitation. Can we really use this, especially in such a field as biopharma and healthcare marketing, with all the regulation, the high standards needed in terms of compliance, and really adhering to all the regulation and not running unnecessary risk. Data security, privacy concerns, and last but not least, model inherent things like hallucinations sometimes make us wonder, how can we balance the reward with the risk or the opportunity with the regulation? I'm very happy to be able to discuss this today with a host of great people who I would like to introduce to you. But before I do that, let me quickly poll. You can already see our experts. We want to run the poll for you. That would also help our experts and us to calibrate the discussion, ideally to your needs. And while I introduce the speakers, we will open the first poll. The first question is fairly simple. Are you already using AI in your marketing? And while you are answering this, I will use the time to introduce the speakers. But let me first give you a few things about the housekeeping for today's session so we all know how this will run its course. First off, we will record the webinar and we will share it with you over the next days so you can review or share with colleagues. You will also find additional resources around today's topic under the Documents tab on the top. There we compiled some really interesting materials for you. Check it out. We think we'll find worth it. If you want more information on topics like these and webinars like these, sign up for the Biopharma newsletter by Magnolia. And you can also do that either with a button at the top, or we'll also ask you again at the end. And last but not least, we will have a discussion. Always ask your questions. We will have dedicated time for Q&A at the end. But if it does make sense and we're not completely caught up in our discussion, we would be happy to weave this in and really focus on what you want to know. So now, without further ado, let me introduce today's panelists. First up, we have Jan Hulshoff-Pohl, who is the head of digital marketing at Berlin Chemie. He's a seasoned marketing and healthcare professional, and that's the interesting thing for today, is already leveraging AI and generative AI in some of his projects. And I think the really amazing thing is it is not just about using it for workflows, but it is also extra, really putting GenAI powered features from patients. Up, we have Boris Arendt, who is a lawyer with some client. Boris has more than 15 years of experience in the field of data protection, IT security. He has been at a large medical devices manufacturer for data protection. Now it's Simpliant. He consults clients around the regulatory and legal issues of using AI in marketing. We also have a dear colleague of mine, Christina Schiffler, who is Executive Director at IBM, one of the largest group of design studios around the world. It is a true expert in content workflows, and elevating your content game. So really looking forward to discussing with Christina. And last but not least, we have Jan Schulte, who is the head of consulting at Magnolia, and will answer us some questions today. So on the technical side, how do you actually build the right stack? How do you integrate solutions you might already be using in your marketing workflows with your DXP or CMS systems? So a great roster of guests here today. And before we move into the discussion and focus a little bit on what Berlin Chemie is already doing, let's quickly have a look at the poll and let's see how you are already leveraging AI in marketing. So we see a very mixed picture, and I think this is not surprising. Some 12, almost 30% are saying, I rely heavily on AI. That is amazing. Congratulations. You found a way to really bring this into your workflows. We have a little bit more than half saying sometimes, depending on the requirements, which is also very encouraging, showing that you are using the technology, but you are dosing it right, depending on what you want to do with it. And we have about a third of our attendants today saying, no, I don't use it in my job yet. And I think that also, dear fellow panelists, keep that in mind. We have a broad array of people here, some using it, some not using it, but the majority is using it for some things. So with that in mind, let's move to our first panelists. Jan Hulshoff-Pohl, you are only leveraging GenAI in your marketing, you're bringing it in front of patients. And you tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Okay, yes. It's a pleasure to be here. And to your question, what we have done is that we have integrated a GenAI solution into our digital patient platform, Therapy. And we call the solution ISA. ISA stands for, in German, it's Intelligente, Schnelle Assistentin, so intelligent, fast assistant. And it's a solution that is based on ChatGPT and operates in 8 common languages, or the most common languages in Germany, that also have a good translation or good language quality on ChatGPT. And if you let me say something about the why we did this development, maybe as you all know, the time you have in the doctor's office, or this situation where a patient-doctor is taking place, mostly there is very little time. Means we try to switch this or transform this critical situation into a more positive win-win situation. And we do this by bringing information to COPD patients beyond the consulting room. So the normal consultation time is about 10 minutes. And we know that this is very little time for patients to process the new diagnosis. Then it's very little time for doctors to explain its implications. And what patients mostly do is that they go to Google and then they start searching. And what they get is mostly, well, still today, mostly SEO optimized content. And this is where ISA steps in. We have restricted, certified content on the platform, and we try to support those patients with information. Yes.
Fantastic. So out of the basically marketing goals we outlined earlier, really empowering patients to take better action, to be more informed once they step in the doctor's office or once the diagnosis, what does it mean to me? You mentioned the content. So you mentioned certified content. So you had a content pool, but now you're bringing it with the help of GenAI in front of patients in a new way so that patients, in their own words, related to what they're exactly looking for, their specific queries and questions, can really engage with that content in a new way.
Yes, we with ISA, we could access to content that has been developed by medical experts and doctors throughout the last 12 years, and this was one of the main challenges that we had. Was to check do we have enough content on the website to feed an AI solution? And we found out that we have more than 700 articles related to the topic of COPD. So yes, it was possible. And one important part again was to restrict the content or the AI to the therapy content. And this was possible as well. So yes, we had enough content, great valuable content for patients. And the AI, as we all know, it's an artificial intelligence. This tool just gives different answers, whatever it is used. Yes. Stressful for pharmaceutical companies.
Yes, I can imagine. I mean, you started fairly early. I mean, this is in the field. We're not just talking about POC. This is live in front of patients already. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the challenges you were facing, also convincing maybe the company, the legal team. How did you actually bring this to life? Because as we said, there's a lot of anxiety. You mentioned hallucinations.
Yes. Well, first was the content that I already mentioned, and we could make a check on this one. The other one was, as we started in summer 23, is which AI model could be used. And at that time, I mean, everybody knows that we did this project with IBM iX, was to check several tools. And at that time, we found out that ChatGPT was the best model to use. Then, of course, as you already said, pharmaceutical space means the big question was, could we meet regulatory and compliance requirements? And the question behind this, how do we deal with questions related to drugs? And the other one, very critical as well, how do we deal with potential side effects that people mention? In this, we had to find a 100% reliable solution, what we did. And the last one, hallucination, yes, was a question, can we train this beast so it stops hallucinating beyond indication? And really, we had some sleepless nights. And I would like to give an example. For example, and when we started, you could ask Isa, what is a cat? And Isa would explain what a cat is. So, but a cat is a COPD assessment test. Okay, so we had to train this, and we could manage to do it. So we were successful, but we had to delete those stupid answers or misleading answers.
If you look at the challenges you were facing, would you say the technical, you mentioned sort of tuning the model to specific knowledge domains, cat is not the animal, we're actually talking about the assessment, the corpus of knowledge you had, the technical pieces, or convincing the organization, the change required, what was more challenging for you?
I would say the technical part, because what we did from the very beginning is like a very active stakeholder management. So involve all the people that are relevant. We tried to put everyone in place, explain what we were doing. We had a very clear use case that we communicated in the internal communication from the beginning. And maybe our big advantage is that Therapy is a non-medicinal therapy support. So we're not talking about drugs. So we have more room to realize a project like this. And therefore, it was a technical issue. And honestly, we spent weeks and months fine-tuning it. And it was very crazy because once we changed some questions, again, we had to go through, and this prompting was a key issue in this project. Yeah.
Very interesting. I think this is a good time to ask our audience again in terms of challenges. We already learned, are you leveraging it or not? For those of you already leveraging it, it would be fantastic if you could quickly take the poll and tell us what is holding you back. Some of you mentioned, I use it for specific purposes if it's required. Nobody, or a very small percentage, 12% said, I'm using it all the time. What are the challenges you guys are facing? And Jan, you already mentioned some. I think this is really interesting. And while you answer the question, I would move to our second panelist to focus a little bit on the legal and regulatory challenges, because we heard about technical things and we will come back to technology at the end with Jörg Schulte. Boris, you are a lawyer with some client. It's your daily business to consult and advise around how do you basically use AI, keep your data safe, keep people sane, and keep these with the company with the legal experts in-house. What are some of the legal challenges you see in your daily work, and what are the big ones?
Yeah, thank you, Jan. Good question. So to say, the use of AI touches many areas of laws. So, for example, this includes data protection. You already mentioned that, privacy, copyright law, intellectual property, liability issues, and so on. But also the new regulation regarding AI in the world, most importantly, the AI Act in Europe. Yeah, so these are the main challenges we have to face now, and especially in the life science sector, where we have highly regulated products and sensitive health information, for example. Yeah, the requirements might be much higher. The legal requirements depend in the end on the use case, what you're planning with AI. So it makes it different if you use the AI internally for your own purposes, like marketing, or if you want to implement AI into your products, into your medicine, into your medtech device or something like that. So this has to be carefully evaluated. So it's highly recommendable to involve a legal expert in an early stage to guide through the jungle of legal requirements.
And when we come to the copyright issue, because this is, I guess, very present for many people, we've seen some high-profile lawsuits still going on. The verdict is still pending. Content providers suing the model providers, and the users are not sure, will that affect them? Do they have any legal disadvantages? What's your take on that? If we just lose a model, for example, like Jan Holz told us, I'm just using standard GPT-4, obviously fine-tuned on a specific domain, but still model that is, we don't know what the training data was.
Okay, also here, with regard to copyright, it depends which perspective you have. So it makes a difference if you want to create content out of an AI tool, or if you want to protect your own copyright or your own IP from some infringements, for example. So also here, the legal landscape is still evolving. It's very relevant what kind of data we used to train the model. So it's possible that it is copyright protected material, and in principle, you can say an output from an AI is not copyright protected, because it always is necessary that a human create some kind of content. However, the output might be similar to the training materials, or there's some kind of uncertainties. So, and this is something you have to deal with for now, that it's not really clarified. So there are some legal actions taking place all over the world. And so in case of doubts, you carefully prove the output, and kind of thus you can use plagiarism detection software for example, or even to check the terms of services, because some of the tools has some specific provisions on that, how to protect copyright material and so on.
Very interesting. Also, what we're seeing in the market is that the model providers, specifically those not providing the very large all-purpose models, but more smaller targeted models, that they basically publish the training data and also guarantee you there's no copyright issues. We've seen that from different model vendors and providers, that this is a growing market. We take away that, at least the copyright infringement piece of the equation, and that the worry that goes with that. But Boris, you said something very interesting, because we often focus on, am I infringing on someone else's copyright? But you also mentioned, and that's maybe interesting to the audience, it's also your output, your marketing materials created with AI or generative AI also might just be copied and it's not really yours.
Yeah, true. If you want to avoid this, you have to ensure that the input you give into the AI tool is not used for training purposes, just to avoid that your material is used for the model. So this is something you can check in the settings and in many tools. Yeah, and this is something you have to make sure, not only copyright protected material, but also trade secrets. Yeah. So this is you have to be careful to upload documents, and you have to be careful to set up the right settings in your settings section. For example, ChatGPT has a section where you can opt in and opt out the input for the training purposes. So this is very good, important.
One thing that was grabbing the headlines for the last months, also from economic, political standpoints, but today let's look at what does it mean for the practitioner, is the EU AI Act. How would you rate that in terms of marketing, people, experts using that in their workflows, and maybe with a specific nod towards obviously healthcare and biopharma?
Okay, yeah. So the AI Act is a very significant regulation in Europe regarding AI systems. It's more a product-related framework, legal framework, and it classifies the AI system from prohibited to high risk to low risk, and out of that, you have to face certain regulation, like transparency, but also if you have a high-risk system, a risk assessment and a quality management system, and so on. So if you use AI or if you develop AI, you have to evaluate carefully which category of risk you fall in. And out of that, it is you know what the requirements are. In terms of marketing, one thing that is likely to be a high-risk system, but as a lawyer, I have to say, yeah, it depends, of course, yeah. So also here, it's highly recommended to involve a legal expert just to be sure what risk classification you have.
And obviously, besides some of the we talked about the AI Act, we talked about some other things, all the other legal requirements, either from the industry side, what am I allowed to do with content, around content, about medications, around drugs, and so on. On the other side, also GDPR and all privacy things applies. So this is just an added layer of complexity from a legal perspective with specific regulation coming in.
Certainly, that's correct, yeah.
Let's take a look at the results of the second poll quickly, because this is interesting what our audience sees the biggest challenges. We see some are unsure where to begin, very typical thing. There's a lot of technology and also a lot of hype out there. Lack of expertise and talent, also often a big one in terms of, do I have the right people and the right skills? Do I need to buy it all from external vendors and consultancies? What can I do in-house? Budget constraints, interestingly, nobody mentioned. In other industries, that is a big one because money is tight, especially in industry right now, and there might be money for a POC and trying something out, but a full-scale project might not be budgeted for right now. Data privacy and security concerns, about a quarter of the people said this is exactly what concerns me. I think we touched upon this a little bit, and obviously in the Q&A can go deeper. Regulatory and compliance issues. We touched on some of this, but maybe we can also quickly go back to that for a moment. Difficulty integrating with current systems does not seem to be a problem. This, in many other industries, is also a big one because the data I might want to use with my AI systems, really want to leverage, resides somewhere else, often not cleaned up and not readily available for models to ingest or work with. So obviously that's great. You all have a very solid data piece in place. And team hesitation, 15% roughly said, well, there's lack of trust and fears. And I think this is something we can touch upon also in a minute. Is there, Boris, quickly coming back to you, on regulatory and compliance issues, are there any things you would like to point out specifically for the audience that you think worth considering or should be top of the list for anyone trying to tackle this challenge?
So the fields of law I already mentioned are, I think, the most important ones, like let's say data protection, privacy, copyright, and intellectual property, but also the regulations regarding the AI Act. So this is very important. We have to add that the EU Commission will come up with some recommendations in a later stage, so that might be helpful as well, and as well as the industry standards in the health and life science industry. So we carefully have to follow the developments there because they come up with guidelines, and so this is also helpful for your needs then.
Mm-hmm. And I would quickly go back to Jan-Christoph Pohl, because you are the practitioner already deploying and having it in the field. Do these challenges resonate with you, especially was your team gung-ho, we want to do this, or was there also some hesitation and fear?
Oh, yes. No. As I said before, we had a very clear use case because we already had this Therapy platform with a 12 weeks program. And we knew that this is maybe nice if you want to change or switch your habits to more healthier habits in the transcourse of time. But we had no solution for this specific situation where you get the diagnosis and you're full of questions, or what do I have to do and whatever. And instead of searching and getting really awful information, because if I'm good and in search engine optimization, I will be able to put not the best content in front, and ESA really helps there. So just imagine you just got a diagnosis, and then you have the chance when you come home to register and immediately start asking your most urgent questions and get the best answers. So that's and the idea we had that really drove the whole team, and everyone was on fire, to be honest, from the beginning.
Good to hear. So basically giving the team purpose also with the use case, making such an important unburdening the patient in a critical moment in his patient journey, and interesting. Also maybe something for the audience to consider depending on the use cases. Maybe not just have efficiency stuff, but something that gives the team purpose and really elevates what we do for patients or HCPs.
Yeah.
And also quick, because we talked about challenges, and a big one is obviously the whole governance piece. How do I bring all these things together? Please check out the document tab. Again, we provided to you free of charge a Gartner report, how AI governance can help you, especially in the healthcare sector. So if you want to check this out, feel free to download and get the insights. Let's open our third poll, where we look a little bit at the workflow level, because one is to leverage AI in general, but what is your expectation? How is it specifically going to change your marketing workflows in the foreseeable future? Let's say in next 1 to 3 years, which, depending on how you look at it, could be ages in terms of AI, but also could be in terms of organizational change and reorg, could be very short. So what is your expectation, how much that will going to change? And while you answer that, I would move over to our next panelist, Christina Schiffler, content expert and involved in many GenAI and AI projects where we scale content with GenAI. And a big one that's always discussed is how much can the machine do? How much human in the loop do we still need? What is your take on that from the projects you're involved in? What do clients expect and what's realistic?
Actually, I'd like to get back to Jan-Christoph Pohl, because he said he had 700 articles on this topic. And those 700 articles had to be fed into the ChatGPT solution So think about it. You have one content designer, and this content designer should read every one of these 700 articles, should try to find the solution for everything, should try to do an order of everything, to decide what's important, what's not, etc. So that's where we come in. I mean, we have the ChatGPT solution that helps us to gather everything, but we have the human, the content designers, the editors, who are able to give ChatGPT a tone of voice, to give it a style, to give it an order of what we are able to do. And I mean, I saw in the audience, there are many people coming from different countries. So we have all these different languages we need to tackle. And that's, again, usually you would have needed, I don't know, a huge number of people, of content designers who would have to do this work. And now we can work together with ChatGPT, with OpenAI, with whatever solution we want to have. We have a way quicker solution, a way quicker articles and possibilities to answer the questions of the client, the patients, for example. So this is where I think, I don't know whether everyone remembers what last year it was everything about prompt engineering. So we said we don't need any more content designers. We don't need editors anymore. We need prompt engineers. A prompt engineer is important, but a good content designer is able to develop exactly that, because what this person needs to do is to be able to understand. So how will I structure my piece? How will I get to a result that is good and relevant for everyone? And so our content designers learned to work and to prompt their pieces. And when you put a question into ChatGPT, you just get the prompts relevant to that, and you get a coded piece with a little bit. So in my opinion, we need both. I mean, we are way quicker now, and we have better examples. At a time, I needed, 7 medicines to write articles. Then I had to consult the client and say, is this piece okay? So it took really way more time. And I would say maybe today the results are even better, because better generated in a way.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's the point, and that's what makes it so fascinating. Because every one of us loves to generate content and to have a good result. So yeah, that would be my answer to that.
That is interesting. So I take a few things from that. One is you absolutely need the human in the loop at different stages, obviously. I find it very interesting also that we have besides the technical piece, we have AI engineers, and we just said talents and skill shortage is a concern, is a challenge. But we see sort of this argument that we might need many more people, for example, with a degree in German literature or English literature, to not only prompt, but to also understand content structures, syntax, and so on, not from a technical level, but basically how can we structure and work with the existing content, optimize it, and be the bridge between the technology and the people using it. Is it also something that resonates with you and the teams you lead?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to establish very clear guidelines and standards. There must be absolutely, everyone has to be on the same page when it comes to how do we write, and what kind of way do we write? How do we want to answer questions? How do we want to approach people? So that's what I meant with a tone of voice. This is human to define. I mean, ChatGPT would supposedly propose something, but is it the way we want to communicate? I don't know. I suppose, Jan Hulshoff, you had in your team, you had people who exactly defined that. And then they worked with the pieces and did it. So I think that's what we need first. Then you need to you said it before. Again, we had 7 articles with Berlin Chemie on this topic, on this specific topic. So for quality training, for high quality training of of the AI, you need as much as possible content to define the right way of your articles, of your information, of the FAQs, etc. And then again, you need to implement the human oversight, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to control the outcomes. I think this is important as well.
And if we come back to the topic of workflows, because one is I can see AI, specifically generative AI, sort of as a new form of interface. I can chat in my own words, my own language with the content versus I'm needing to compile the right search queries and look it up by myself. I'm being understood by the machine. Another thing is I bring it into the workflows to augment or maybe even substitute specific steps in content production. Where do you see, maybe from the work you're doing, the biggest impact for marketeers? Is it more on the interface side? It's changing dramatically how people will interact with our content, or it's also dramatically changing how we produce that content and how efficient we might get?
Well, we're getting super efficient, because I mean, it's before you were doing research, then you put together you proposed what could be the outline of this piece. Then you started to write. Then you had to check with the person, is the content correct? Then you had to try to find out how should I put it today. So it's really for workflow, as you're asking. It's for efficiency as well, and for accuracy as well. If you train right, if you have the right training methods, if you have the right training contents, your way of your results are going to be way more precise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. And maybe at this point, let's do two things. One is I would like to quickly, again, alert you of our content offering. We have a great white paper available for you, how to get started with GenAI in your marketing. So if you want to check that out, download it, feel free to do so. And let's also share the results of the third poll, because we talked about workflows. It's interesting to see, because we learned sort of the agency's perspective from Christina. I guess most of you are more in in-house roles. So what are your expectations of how strongly or hardly AI, and specifically generative AI, will change your marketing workflows? So a little bit under half, 44.44%, said it will transform most of our workflows. So fairly optimistic, or maybe anxious, I don't know, that this will be a strong force. A little bit more than a quarter said moderately. Less, 11% said hardly. It's not going to change how we do things. And a whopping 17% said, I'm uncertain. It's too early to tell, which is a fair assessment, because things are changing rapidly, and what might be future talk a few months ago might be realistic today, and what was hyped yesterday might not realize in the upcoming days and weeks as proposed. But that's really interesting that almost half think it's really going to strongly influence what we're doing. And I think that resonates with some of the descriptions, Christina, you gave us on how you see that from an agency side. But it's not only a content and a legal and an implementation thing. It's also a technological realm that is changing how we need to build the stack, how we need to integrate the technology into our existing systems. Even though you mentioned, for most of you, that's not the challenge. Maybe your IT guys might give a different answer. I'm not sure. Might depend on the role and function of the organization. But let's move to Jan Schulte, who is head of consulting at Magnolia. And Jan, in that role, your job is not only to help clients build today, but already think about tomorrow. So maybe let's focus on today. What do you see as some of the hurdles and challenges from a technical standpoint, and maybe some ideas on how to tackle that? And then a little later, let's look into the future.
Yep. Excellent question. As we've already seen in those polls, the pure technical hurdles are relatively low compared to a lot of other projects that I've seen in the past, or other technologies, because in the end, what we're speaking about, it's really about taking APIs and just making good use of them. interestingly enough, one of the key challenges that I see pretty often, it's really this having this deep meta understanding about how I can use those services for the different workflow steps where it really makes sense. It's very typical conversation. Basically, we just show the AI accelerator, we just show how to optimize content, how to personalize content, and so on. And this already is quite a lot that you can do with very little effort. But from my point of view, AI becomes really transformative if you just look at those workflows that are just notoriously hard to do, that take a lot of time to get them right, or even some kind of things that you cannot do, like, for example, personalization, that's low-hanging fruit. And what I really see, it's much about really finding the right things that can be done, because the technical aspects, in the end, they are not really hard. What's much, much harder is what we also heard from Jan, is making sure that you have basically your core data basically right. Because it's one of the problems, or let's call it a challenge. If you look at something like ChatGPT, it really has this world knowledge. It knows quite a few things about almost everything. However, what you have, that's pretty specific, and maybe also the base knowledge really changed, especially in pharma. I mean, a lot of things that were basically the de facto standard maybe just changed with something new. Yet the LLM will obviously fall back to the old world, which is something that you absolutely don't want. So what we also heard from Jan, what we really need is just the core data that you're going to infuse basically into all those API calls. That is really something that I see as the core aspect. Because once you have, at least from my experience, once you are able to basically pull in the relevant data in a call, then basically what really kicks in is just reasoning, and it's just going to answer within the boundaries that are basically set by this provided content. Once you come to this mode that you have really all the data that really matters, and it can be just part of this prompt, the reasoning capabilities of modern LLMs are really amazing, and that basically helps you to get basically workflows that really work and that really change quite a bit. Not like getting maybe 10-15% more effective, getting much more effective. That's basically what you get out of that.
Maybe we do a quick deep dive, and I hope this is answerable. We have a question from the audience relating back to Jan Hulstorff-Pohl's problem with the cat being an animal. And you just mentioned, I have the model has a certain view of the world, and the cat is that animal. We all like it, funny videos. But actually here it is a specific part of the treatment. So what would be a way to solve that kind of problem, that cat refers in this context to something else, and I don't want the model to infer the animal? Is there an easy solution?
Is it Jan?
I would say Jan from the technical perspective. I don't know, both of you.
Okay. From my point of view, it's if the description of cat as a disease, if that is basically part of this aggregated content, it should automatically not go into the direction of, hey, a cat is a wonderful furry friend that makes you happy. It should absolutely just stick to basically the description of the disease. I said this really, this hyper prompting, how we call it in Magnolia, is just really, first of all, making sure that the style, the tone of voice is basically set. That is a big part of the underlying prompts to really make sure that you have content that fits. The second bit, it's really the core data. So it's not going to speak about furry friends, or if someone is trying to test the system and tries to order a pizza, then basically if just the matching content is provided, then also part of this prompt will be, hey, and if you cannot basically answer this question or just generate this content based on the provided content, well, then just say, sorry, can't do. The context absolutely matters.
We talked about some of the current things, but as we mentioned, part of your job description is also to help your clients navigate the future. So what do you think? We talked about workflows, and you are heavily involved in a lot of, from a technical standpoint, a lot of marketing projects. What do you see in the next 1 to 3 years changing? What are some technological things you think our audience should now already have heard about and maybe start reading up
on? Everything changes at the same time at breakneck speed. For example, out of the blue, there was this new company called Flux AI, and guess what? Now finally stock photos are really a thing of the past. took a while. We had our wonderful Starry Night style transfers, and we had some kind of images that really, were kind of good to look at, but not really usable in a production quality workflow. Boom, here we are. So, for example, the work with images is going to change drastically. Automatically generated movies are going to become a thing under guarantee pretty soon. For content management, obviously my domain, the way how editors work will definitely change drastically, and we are working on that. It will be just get yet another level of abstraction on top. Right now, it's really pretty much hands-on. There's my content brief. Someone just writes the full content in all details. And then it's just basically by hand put into the XP platform. There's definitely going to be a new level of abstraction. So it's really going to be more around planning processes, ideation, providing the right content briefs, and then, as described, with all the content around, automatically a lot of those things are then pre-generated. And then the workflow steps are obviously like pretty important. Never forget this. Don't get carried away. Human in the loop. Someone has to absolutely check this content and make sure that it's really compliant. So yeah, it's going to be, it's a little bit like with writing code back in the days, assembler to something like Python or Java nowadays. And this is the same thing with, as I said, content management. I'm going to write every paragraph on my own. No, this is not what it's going to be. It's going to be about making strategic calls, what basically has to be created new, what has to be optimized, and so on. Plus, this chat agent thing obviously also becomes much, much bigger. Therefore, also making sure that certain bits of content will be just basically in the chatbot of choice on your website. This is definitely what's coming. I'm 100% sure. And yeah, we're working on that.
Exciting times ahead. And
yes.
As you said, sort of we're abstracting away more and more of the technological complexity still. And we heard this resonate here quite often. Prompting is still a big thing. And
yes.
It might be an interesting moment now to give you a call to action to our audience. Actually, there will be an upcoming webinar on how to prompt professionally, how to make the most out of your model by prompting the right way. So sign up for that if you want to learn how to prompt like master. And I think this would be really interesting. You can just sign up here by indicating your interest as part of this poll. You will then be informed. This might be a very interesting one. Without, let's move to the Q&A session, because I think if I'm looking at the time, this might be the right time. We have some questions from the audience, which I would like to pick up. Also, feel free to add other questions into the Q&A section, which is on the side. And one question is interesting, coming back to the challenges, which is a concern is around the growing environmental footprint of AI. We all hear about very not only data hungry, but water and energy hungry data centers being set up, huge models getting bigger and bigger, using up lots of energy. Does anyone want to feel inspired here to an answer? What are some of the things that we can do to tackle this challenge? I mean, there will be research, many people working on that, smaller models, more compact models, better data centers. But what are some of the things that maybe our audience can take away from them? Or is it something just rely on a model provider, you can't do anything?
Yeah. When ChatGPT 3 started, it was pretty clear you need massive hardware. Otherwise, it will be impossible to run something like this. Well, fast forward, you can run something that's pretty close to GPT-4 on your MacBook. So basically, the amount of optimization that's currently happening, it's just gigantic. And I'm pretty sure that the energy consumption will basically will reduce over time. It has to, because energy costs money, and in the end, every company has to be kind of profitable, and you cannot have a service that's way too expensive. Therefore, the pressure absolutely is here, and that will autocorrect, I'm absolutely sure.
Also, I would like to add, because this is something we are also obviously working on and involved in, there's this argument of yes, it's using energy, and it might use more energy than more traditional things. We see that, for example, with web queries. There's different calculations. Sometimes people say AI generated answer versus a normal Google search is 5 to 10 times more energy. So you say, stay away from that. Don't ask you stupid questions every time to the model. Then again, there's a second part of the argument is by not just this simple questioning thing, but by influencing more and more of our workflows and creating efficiencies and taking out redundant work, in the end, the sum might be very positive if you basically look at how much energy is AI and GenAI going to save us versus it uses. But I think this is something that's out there. But this is an argument, for example, obviously the big tech companies are making. You got to wait a little bit, but then the full impact is there, and it's going to reduce so much redundant work, slow processes, and so on. And we might see a very positive, basically energy footprint after calculating and taking the full tab. We have also in the audience one very specific question to Jan Holz of Poland. How many patients are using ESA? And how is their feedback? Are people happy with it?
Okay, we at the moment we have, so you have to register on the Teraki platform to use ESA for the time being. And we know that approx 80% of all COPD patients that register use ESA. So we have ESA placed with a very nice icon. It's an owl, very nice icon, very visible. So it's in 8 languages. This helps a lot for everyone living in Germany using those common languages, and the feedback is mostly positive. So we have just one other question where we get this thumbs down, and then we, of course, what we do is we take this feedback for a constant fine-tuning of the prompt.
Fantastic.
We are very happy with the usage for the time being, but we would love to see doctors' offices using it as well, because they have those language barriers and issues in the doctor's office. And how do I explain a French person living in Germany that doesn't speak German that he has this new disease? And we hope that the doctor's offices will use this as well as a translation tool.
Fantastic.
For helping their patients. Yes.
Great final words. I'm just being alerted from our fantastic backstage crew that our time is more or less up. Any other questions we haven't answered, we will answer in written form, so we're not forgetting anything here. At this point, I can only say thank you to the audience for being interested in this topic. A big thank you to all our panelists for sharing their insights and learnings. And we hope to see you at our next webinar on prompting, Become a Prompt Guru with Magnolia. So sign up for that. Do use the docs we provided. Interesting stuff. And yes, hope to see you all again very soon.